Warning. This video and all other videos on this channel are for entertainment purposes only. The content of this video and all other videos on this channel are the opinions of the creator only and do not constitute legal, trading, investment, or financial advice of any kind. Investing carries a high level of risk and the majority of retail clients lose money. Do not invest any capital unless you understand the risks and you are prepared to lose it all. Hi guys, Camel from the future here. I mostly freestyled today's episode and I really made some very good points, if I do say so myself, pertaining to the global liquidity cycle and this whole idea that the bull market is going to go on well into next year. So I'll put a timestamp down the bottom somewhere here, hopefully. If nothing else, please do go and check that out because I believe it's very important, and I do believe most investors are getting that bit wrong, or at least they're not considering all possible outcomes there. So if nothing else, skip ahead to this little bit down here, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Cheers.
I make the world go round in the fantasy what happened. Will it stop turning? Let's find out. Stealth QE for the banks. Rates need to stay high. Changing the CPI data. Insist it ain't a lie. Misdirection by the media. Keep everyone in line.
Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and we got a bunch of weird stuff to go through today. So I made a little list of notes before we start. First of all, 15k subs has officially been hit, so a massive thank you to everyone that has supported this channel. I'm very humbled by this whole experience, and I think our community is absolutely fantastic. So a massive thank you to everyone. It's been a while. Don't watch my cracked version of PowerPoint. It's been a while since we've given the OGs a shout out, but here is everyone that earned channel OG status by being amongst the first 1,000 people to subscribe to the channel. So if you're still here, put a comment to say you're still here, and thank you for being early to this movement. And we've also got people that have earned triple OG status for being amongst the first 500 subscribers. So a massive thank you to all of you guys. Thank you again to everyone, and also thank you to the people that have been sending me things to the PO box. I've been getting postcards from all around the world. I've been getting somebody sent me a gold back, which is just mind-blowing. So thank you so much for the people that send me things in the post. The next thing I wanted to point out is we had a meme cut off yesterday. I don't know if many people realize this, but the intro meme got cut off, and it was just a short clip of the Island Boys. And it was because I got a copyright thing come up and I wasn't allowed to use the meme. So I had to trim that bit out, and it just left us with a bit of music and a clip of the Island Boys. So for the people that were a bit confused about that, that's the explanation. And yesterday I actually got caught by presenting some fake news pertaining to Mt. Gox. I got absolutely lit up in the comment section for this, and to be fair, rightfully so. Often I make videos, and yesterday I was in a bit of a funny mood and we were just sort of mocking things and being silly. I said a lot of absurd things in yesterday's video, but that does not mean that I don't have a responsibility as a content creator to provide you with accurate information, and frankly it is just laziness. So I owe you an apology for not fact checking the information about Mt. Gox. I'm going to go over the truth about Mt. Gox just to make sure that we've cleared this up. Yesterday I presented this and said that the Mt. Gox stuff is probably still FUD, and that they were only going to get about 0.008 Bitcoin per Bitcoin held at the time, which of course would reduce the 9 billion that was allegedly about to be sold on the open market down to just 72 million. And it's not too far from the truth, but it certainly is far from the truth at the same time. The reality of this is the Mt. Gox creditors are going to get 15%, so approximately 0.15 Bitcoin for every Bitcoin that they held at the time. And I even had a Mt. Gox creditor reach out to me and kind of confirm this, right? So what he said here was basically for every coin you lost back around then, you're going to get about 0.15 to 0.18 Bitcoin, same amount in Bitcoin cash. There's also a cash payout, which many have already received, which the trustees sold many years ago to lock in what the creditors had lost at 400-ish per Bitcoin. So for every one Bitcoin lost on exchange, one is going to receive approximately 615 USD. Additionally, creditors had to choose to receive early Bitcoin or BCH payments, which in many cases seems to be happening in July, or they could have chose a payment later for an additional few percent overall on Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash payments. However, there is no deadline, and there's also the possibility based on the CoinLab lawsuit, that those who select final payment would also receive the same as those who elected early. Finally, there was an odd last choice, which is referred to as the early lump sum payment, where the trustee can liquidate your Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash and give you a bank wire for the liquidated value of the claim. So there's a ton of internal polling that went on with the creditors about the claim size and who selected which payment option. Very few selected lump sum liquidation. The statistics are mixed amongst those who selected early payment, but overall, those with about 50 plus Bitcoin claims have voted to be holders with minimal interest in liquidating significant amounts of Bitcoin on the market. The majority of those who will be selling have less than 1 Bitcoin, and the estimated overall impact would be a few hundred Bitcoin in total sales. So thank you for bringing this to my attention. This number is obviously way too low. However, the truth of the matter is they are still not going to get the vast majority of what is owed to them. We're almost certainly not going to see anywhere close to 9 billion come onto the market as of July, as the news would have you believe. And so hopefully that clears up the Mt. Gox situation. I think of note here is the past 3 times Mt. Gox repayment FUD was dropped. Okay, you can see here, here, and here. Bitcoin did Bitcoin things thereafter. So given that we've got this kind of circulating again, is it now time to Dalai Lama our way out of here? We're going to get to that in just a minute. And a similar sort of post here is things that you want to see at the bottom. Bad news, i.e. Mt. Gox and German government selling, which of course we've had at this current cycle low. Aggressive market sell orders, daily EMA 200 and weekly EMA 21, and bearish depressed timeline. I think we've had all of those, just like we had here, here, and here. I think it does set us up to see some bullishness, even though sentiment is pretty wiped out at the current moment. So that's the facts about Mt. Gox. I do still put this in the category of FUD overall. I don't think that 9 billion or anywhere close to that is going to come onto the market. Based on what the creditors have been saying, it seems like they've already had a fair amount of that in cash, and they're certainly not getting anywhere close to what they're actually owed. The next thing I wanted to touch on was a bunch of people were saying that I was far too emotional yesterday, and I would just say a couple of things, okay? First of all, it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to be human. What's not okay is to trade or invest based on an emotional response. That's not okay. But it's okay to be emotional, right? You don't have to be a completely numb robot. And I will say this, you can't see me smiling as I say a lot of this stuff, but I think sometimes I just sound angrier than I am. But I would say, don't read too much into how I'm feeling on the day. Just, take the information for what it is. I think I said plenty of absurd things yesterday to kind of illustrate that I was just in a funny mood. I also laughed a bunch of times through the video, so I don't really think I was angry, even though some people seem to think that was the case. And then the last thing I wanted to cover is the fear and greed index, since an awful lot of people were talking about this yesterday. So we're going to get to that in just a moment. First of all, did you notice that there's a bunch of these charts circulating online, okay? The daily RSI is as oversold as it was back in the FTX collapse, okay? So that's pretty wild, pretty notable, and you can see Bitcoin does Bitcoin things usually thereafter. It's also only the 4th time we've been this oversold since the FTX bottom, since the bear market lows, okay? And you can see good things happened thereafter. So we're going to find out, do we need consolidation and go, or are we going to come swinging out of here? That is to be determined. In amongst this sea of bearishness and FUD and everything else, okay, somebody bought $961 million worth of Bitcoin from Gemini. So probably nothing, right? I do still think we got a pretty good shot at Dalai Lamaing our way out of here, meaning this Mew pattern that comes from this Dalai Lama meme. I still think this is possibly in play. I think this is about the right time in terms of the cycle count to see this. So for the next few days, I do kind of expect to see that rollover, right? I still kind of expect to see us build that structure out. Of course, invalidation for this is a new low. I found this from Shark. Shout out Shark, by the way. Seems we may well be working on our right shoulder of this inverse head and shoulders pattern. So there's that. And I think if we do Dalai Lama our way out of here, it may look something like this. Okay, now this is admittedly is the most bullish outcome. Don't get me wrong. There are many other scenarios on the table. But if we do Dalai Lama our way out of here, I do think it sets us up for this quite nicely. And in hindsight, we'd be able to look back and say, well, that was just a flush before that third and final angle came in. As of yesterday, the day before, fear and greed seems to have sorted itself out, right? It seems to have fixed itself. So yesterday we were showing fear at 30 and 46, somewhere in this neighborhood is the current index reading. I've seen a lot of speculation that maybe this is some kind of manipulation or whatever. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if it was a data error or if it's just because this tracks Bitcoin, right? Does this just track Bitcoin, and the fear mostly came from people that were holding altcoins? A lot of you were talking about that in the comment section. That makes sense, right? A lot of the altcoins puked 40 to 80% before we saw that move down in Bitcoin occur. So maybe a large portion of the fear came from people holding altcoins. And I also saw a bunch of people saying things like, well, they're holding up better than Bitcoin, but that only pertained to the one day that Bitcoin had the puke, right? This day right here, where we saw that big move down, that big flush, many altcoins had held up better than Bitcoin during that one session. But that is because all of this time, altcoins spent declining 40 to 80%, right? So maybe that's what we saw. Altcoins lead the move lower. Now we've had the flush. Like I said, I'm hoping we can see some kind of Dalai Lama. A trendline breakout for me confirms that is indeed a cycle low. And then the big question becomes, do we get our third and final angle? So again, saying the same thing over and over again until something changes. I much prefer this FOMO finder, and we're back to balanced, right? And I showed this on the chart where we did slip into purple, into panic for a short amount of time. And already it's almost beginning to have the potential to morph into a bottom look here, right? To see a push out of here. So again, it's to be determined, but I think it's encouraging so far. Over in traditional finance, Bob Lucas put this out yesterday, and I thought this was absolutely fascinating, right? Stocks are moving into that half cycle low. Of course, the Camel Crew knew this well ahead of time, but the weekly cycle still looks perfectly good, at least to Bob. Now, in theory, trouble would be more likely to come in the August timeframe when the weekly cycle is approaching a peak. And so I said yesterday, August, eh? Okay, August. Now, of course, the big question becomes, once we've seen the half cycle low, right, the daily cycle low, and then we're getting up into that July-August timeframe. Bob's saying August, but I'm going to come back and show you why July is also on the table. The big question here is this simply a weekly cycle low decline, right? And then do we continue up only forever, as the liquiditists and Raoul Paul, etc., would have us believe, as the people that think the real estate cycle, that 18.6 year real estate cycle, has not topped yet? And is all of that still in play, right? Do we run higher well into next year? Or do we get not only a major top and a decline into a weekly cycle, but then a rollover, and that is actually the end? Is that actually a possibility? I think it is. And as I mentioned, that 18.6 year cycle for the real estate, a lot of people cling to this, right? But I think it's intellectually dishonest to just say, well, it's got to keep going up. Because when you look at things like the housing market in general, right? Yes, you can cherry pick areas where prices are doing better than they were a few months back. But wholly speaking, real estate is in trouble, okay? Housing prices have been being reduced. Commercial real estate is in the toilet and is so bad it's causing banks to have unrealized losses and risk insolvencies. So there's a whole idea that, well, we're just going to keep going up. I think we're kind of forgetting about the fact that the housing market probably already topped some time ago. Certainly commercial real estate not looking great, hasn't been looking great for a long time. Now things can change, right? Things could break out. Maybe that's about to come. Maybe we are going to break out. Maybe we're going to change direction, and maybe there is indeed more gas left in that goose. But I don't think just saying, well, the 18.6 year cycle isn't due to top until the end of next year is a good enough reason. And the other thing I hear all the time is, well, what about the liquidity cycle, right? It's only just bottomed. Liquidity is going to keep rising. Global liquidity, as it increases, will carry the markets, Bitcoin, crypto, way higher into that right translated cycle top, right? The whole idea is that as liquidity keeps doing this, so will Bitcoin and crypto, and alt season will happen because of this, right? But again, this is intellectually dishonest, or perhaps it's just nescience. But the facts are the facts, okay? A top in Q3 and Q4 is probably more likely. And even though we can look at this chart that I just showed you and say, well, liquidity is going to keep moving up, that can be true with a backdrop of economic decline and contraction. So whilst this is what central banks do, does it actually prevent a recession? And the answer is no, it doesn't, okay? Liquidity, here's what you probably didn't know, right, was soaring into the financial crisis. And yet we had a major recession. So this can continue to move higher whilst having a global recession, okay? Just because liquidity is going to go up does not mean that all the markets have to move higher into the end of next year. Liquidity does not actually drive the business cycles. Consumers drive the business cycles. And this is what I keep talking about with the weekend's deep dive. The consumer's in a bad way, okay? Debt is higher than ever. Savings are lower than ever. The interest on those debts is higher than it has been in a very long time. People can't sell their houses. People can't move houses because they can't afford the interest rates. Most people that aren't asset holders, that haven't been in this space, okay, haven't increased their wealth like everyone else has. Most people have become poorer than ever because they don't have any assets and they've been eaten alive by inflation. Most people were living paycheck to paycheck for a very long time. You forget this is, a huge amount of the population lives paycheck to paycheck before inflation. The consumer is out here dying. Okay, that's the reality. It's the asset holders, the Bitcoiners, the crypto guys. We're doing fine. Glory be to God. But that is only because we hold assets, okay, that seem to outperform the rate of inflation. That's not true for most people. As I keep saying every weekend deep dive, the recession seems to be coming, okay? Not only that, we keep seeing the labour market deteriorate. We keep seeing unemployment looking to be spiking. We've even started to see the rate cuts in all areas apart from the Bank of England and the Fed for the US, right? And I have been making the case the entire time that whilst this was initially a story of liquidity, right? Whilst we used liquidity to find the bottom in the stock market and in Bitcoin, the people that are saying, well, this is going to keep going up, and therefore so is Bitcoin and crypto well into the end of next year, might be missing the bigger picture, okay? This can continue to happen whilst the stock market puts in a blow-off top in this neighborhood and then spends the rest of this entire liquidity cycle breaking, just like we saw in 2008. Kemazabi made a great point here, okay? Look, 2006 at the liquidity low was the peak in housing. Have we not already seen the peak in housing? I'm pretty sure we have, right? I've been saying this again consistently over and over again. I have a playlist where every 6 months or so I pop in and take a look at the housing market. Henrik has a major point here, right? Absolutely major point. And that's why I was saying I 100% agree with this, right? I don't think that just because liquidity is going up, that means all assets are going up well into next year. And I think the truth is in the charts, right? If we look at the charts, as I've been saying over and over and over again, okay, all that is missing for Bitcoin is the completion of this third and final angle. Even the Elliott waivers that were saying that this current move was 3 into 4 of the 3 before the major 4, before 5 into 5 into 5 into 5, even they have just been invalidated on this idea and are now saying this must be 3 into 4 before that 5 comes in, right? There's only 5 left now. Even the Elliott waivers are on board with this third angle coming in. And from a cycle perspective, this makes sense. Like I said, you know, anything and everything is on the table. This could be the top and we die, right? That's always a possibility. But the only missing component is this third and final angle. If we do set something like this, on average, they last 2 to 8 weeks. That's all. That's all the third angle lasts. And then when we look at things like the stock market, it seems like we're more or less thinking about putting in that third and final angle. And going back to what Bob Lucas was saying, Bob Lucas is very bullish, right? Bob Lucas is saying, well, they're going to keep right translating, half cycle low, right translated, and then off we go. But if I draw your eyes to the blue arrows on this S&P 500 chart, okay, we've got, I've showed this a bunch of times, right translated, 1, right translated, 2, right translated, 3. What we don't have to see it, but what we should expect, okay, what would happen more often than not is that fourth cycle, whether it's on the weekly time frame, the daily time frame, whatever, that fourth cycle, and we see that fractalization across all time frames, the fourth cycle should be expected more often than not to left translate, okay? So sure, it can right translate, and if it does, maybe that puts a major weekly cycle top in for August. Like I said earlier, maybe that is the top, or maybe we're going to continue to go up only, right? Maybe I'm completely wrong about the liquidity rising into a recession and markets topping anyway. But as I said, right translated, right translated, right translated, we're possibly, you know, more reasonable to expect left translation here than anything else. Okay, and then I would suggest to you, if we do this, parabolic blow off top is in play, true trendline breakdown, and perhaps what we'll see is some kind of counter trend bounce that rolls over. Okay, isn't that not what we should expect if there's going to be a global recession, if unemployment is going to continue to spike, if the housing market is going to tank, right? Because people are going to lose their jobs and be forced to sell their house at whatever they can. All of this can occur with liquidity increasing. Like I was saying, the only missing component here, really, the only one is Bitcoin, which, if that is indeed a cycle low and we're about to Dalai Lama our way out of here, you know, we could be about to see this any day now. And very, very few people believe that's even on the table at the moment, given the current flush and the current market structure and everything else. Meanwhile, for gold, okay, least we forget, this thing has broken out to all-time highs, okay? Had a big, big squeeze. We're now consolidating and digesting this move up into a weekly cycle low, which is going to be somewhere around the next daily cycle low. We might have to extend one final daily cycle beyond that to find the weekly cycle low. But then if indeed it does what I think it does, which is find a cycle low around this, you know, mid-July timeframe, right? The next daily cycle low is also the weekly cycle low, and the thing breaks out like my arbitrary yellow squiggle suggests, then what does that signify? Does that not signify that, you know, alarm bells are ringing here? Right? This is probably suggesting that we see a top come in, or maybe we have the top come in for markets, everything crashes one final time, weekly cycle low, and then off we go to the races. And why would gold run like that? Why? Well, I would suggest to you, because gold is in a bull market, because it knows that a big recession is coming, and the end of this big bull market, this fractal here as well, okay? Not looking too far from reality, okay? And it's just a fractal. I'm not by no means saying this is what's going to play, but this is what I expect to play. This is what we've been talking about in the members section over and over again, why it's so important to play these miners and mining stocks as well as gold and silver, out of this next weekly cycle low. So at the end of the day, I do bring Raoul Pal up a lot, but that's only because he's kind of the brand of this global liquidity cycle. This whole thing is very much Raoul Pal-esque, right? He's the guy that's sort of made it known to the most people. He's the guy that believes in it the most. It's kind of his idea in a way. And it's a hypothesis that he is testing, just like I have my hypothesis that I'm testing, right? One of us is going to be proven wrong. One of us is going to be proven right. And it's not about being right or wrong, okay? He says the same thing all the time. As investors and traders, we get things wrong all the time. It's not about that. If we are indeed going to push higher with this liquidity, then my job is simple, right? Stay long and strong until the trend breaks. Sell out near the top, flip short, right? So I need to be open to this just as much as I'm suggesting everyone else needs to be open to the fact that we could well see a recession show up in the not too distant future, that third and final angle come in for the stock market, left translate on this fourth weekly cycle, and then be, open to seeing a big risk off moment. And again, I say, the only missing component is this. But even the Elliott waivers are now saying, okay, this, like I said, can't be 3 into 4 before the 3, before the macro 4, before the 5, because that's been invalidated now. So that probably was 3 into 4, and now we've just got 5 left. 5 waves up, and that might be all she wrote, okay? So it's a wild, wild, wild time to be alive. Remember, if this indeed is the cycle low, somewhere around the end of June, then 2 to 8 weeks on average is how long that lasts. So 8 weeks from the end of June, end of July, end of August. Okay, I'll take it. That's close enough for me. The next daily cycle low for the S&P is due around the end of July. And then, if we get something like this, half cycle low, final squeeze, left translated daily cycle with a third and final angle breakdown, failed weekly cycle, that's all she wrote. Global recession, maybe a demand destroying event. And as if that's not enough confluence, like I was saying, gold setting up to pull back into a weekly cycle low somewhere around July and August and then break out and potentially start to do this, okay? And all of these people that have been dunking on gold for all this time are sleeping on this, right? And frankly, this is conservative as well. This is absolutely conservative in my humble opinion. And just as a note, if this is the correct hypothesis, and we don't know, right? Like I said, I'm open to seeing Raoul Pal prove me wrong as well. I'm completely open to that. And I mention him a lot, and people are like, why do you hate Raoul Pal? I don't hate him at all. That's not what this is. It's just, like I said, he's like the brand of that. Here, like I said yesterday, we smoke crack and find cycle lows, right? It's just 2 different brands, 2 different approaches, 2 different hypotheses. But if this setup is to play, right? If the thing is to break down, if Bitcoin really is about to set a third and final angle, then you've got a huge chunk of the market saying things like, well, liquidity is up until next year, right? Well, this is just going to keep going up, and therefore no way we're going to get a left translated cycle. You've got a huge amount of market participants saying, well, the 18.6 year real estate cycle doesn't top until next year, right? Late next year, maybe even 2026. So we've trained and conditioned investors to think that this is just the beginning. We're still really, really early, which means if this is to occur, they're going to buy the dip the entire way down, right? Same for the stock market. They're going to let this thing blow off, cool off, start to break down, and they're going to be trained to buy the dip, expecting that there's still a good year and a half left. And it might not be the case. At the same time, they're going to be sleeping on gold because as far as they're concerned, this is ridiculous, right? This is not in play. But for those people that know how to read charts, okay, that is a breakout above the prior all-time high in the face of the stocks doing well, okay? That's not nothing. That's absolutely not nothing. Gold always knows something. And whilst we're pointing at charts and saying charts always know something, the 10-year yield, remember, is called the chart of truth, okay? The chart of truth is breaking down. Can we get a counter-trend bounce? For sure, right? But if it does this over the next couple of months into that July-August timeframe, what does that say? It says they are going to be cutting rates. Tell it to the bond market. Would something like this make perfect sense given that the ECB and everywhere else has already started cutting rates? Yes, of course. And historically speaking, when they see those cuts and led lower by the 2-year yield, does that coincide within a couple of months of seeing the top in risk? Yeah. So I think all the signs are there. And as I always say, right, if I get invalidated, then I get invalidated. We'll change it. We'll adjust to the market. If this thing really is just going to be a weekly cycle decline, right, then we can play the weekly cycle decline. That's fine. If there's no sign of a recession, then, keep in mind, even though it seems like I'm doom posting, even though it seems like I'm calling tops here and trying to be the guy that nails the recession, right? I have no interest in being Michael Burry, right? and frankly, that guy's rubbish anyway, if we're being completely honest, right? He was 2 years early, which in trading, being early or being late is the same as being wrong, okay? Timing is everything in this game. And keep in mind that if that is just a weekly cycle low and then off we go, right? Or actually, no, that would be the daily cycle low. If that's the weekly cycle low and then we go out of there, for somebody who finds cycle lows, buys them, manages the risk, and rides a trend, I obviously want this thing to keep going, right? I obviously want that to be the case. It will be so much easier for me to make money buying cycle lows, knowing that we've got a full weekly cycle behind us. But like I said, based on everything I've shown you today, particularly if the geopolitical tensions and stuff start to heat up and all of that sort of esoteric stuff I've been calling for starts to show up right on schedule, right around the time of the Olympics, then at least I think this is worth being open to. As ever, we'll keep taking it one day at a time. We keep acknowledging all possible outcomes, and it's a market, anything can happen at any time. For now, we do just wait for Bitcoin to see if we can find that Dalai Lama. If I get a cleaner chart of Bitcoin, right, this is all we're waiting to see, right? Is this the Dalai Lama, Mu pattern, and then do we come swinging out of here? Either way, we're going to get an answer pretty soon. And unless something drastically changes, right, unless we start to see this thing really roll over, lose our second angle, let me take it off log so it actually fits, right? Unless we start to see true invalidation and breakdown occur, then everything is still going according to plan. So like it or lump it, the data is the data. I'm your boy Camel. I hope you're doing well in life. And until next time, take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.